Welcome back. Let's continue building our awesome tool. We have our Pond API check that only converts our password to SHA-1. But we need to send this to the API, the password API. So what can we do here? The first thing we want to do is remember we only need the first 5 characters of our password, or the hashed password. So we can do something fun here. We can say first 5 characters, and also have what we call the tail. So we're going to store the first 5 characters in the first variable, and in the second variable, we're going to store the remaining, because we're going to need both of these later on. So in here, we can just use the nifty little thing that, well, Python allows us, which is this nice little syntax to just grab the start up to the 5th character, and then for the second part, the remaining characters. So starting from the 5th index all the way till the end. Nice and easy. And this is something that we've learned about before. So now we have the first 5 characters and the tail. And here we can now add this to our request API data. So I can now call my request API data, and in here give it, well, the first 5 characters. And let's just store the response in here, like so. Now let's see what type of response we get. So I'm actually going to return response here. And just so we make sure that we're doing everything right, let's print out the first 5 characters and the tail as well to make sure that everything is working. If I run this, right, it looks like I'm getting the first 5 characters. There's a space here and then the remaining, and we don't get any error. It looks like the response is working. So let's also print the response. And make sure that that is working as well. Looks like we get a response of 200, but we're still not sure exactly what type of data we receive. What can we do here? Well, I want to learn more about this data that we return. So let's create another function here. And for now, we'll just call it read response. And we're going to just give it the response that we get. And in here, let's just try to read this response. We can actually do print response.text here, because it's an API response, so ideally we can just read the text. Let's see if that does anything. So this return response will just have read response, like so. If I run this, hey, look at that. This is our response. As you can see, it's a ton of hashed passwords. There's a lot of them. It looks like a couple of hundred. So this is what we get from our response. By using response.text, we get all the hashes that match the beginning of our hashed password. Very cool. What we can actually do, you see over here how we get 24, 3, 1, and so on. This shows you actually how many times these passwords have been hacked. That's pretty cool. So ideally, we're able to grab the count, see if any of it matches with our tail, because now we can just check the tail and also print out the count. So instead of having a read response function, let's have a get password leaks count function that receives the hashes or the response and the actual hash to check, which is our own password hash that we need to check against. So we're going to check this hash to check and loop through all the hashes. So we can do something, again, nifty with Python here. We can say hashes equals, and we can use a tuple here. And we can actually do a tuple comprehension, which we've seen before. I can say line.split. So we're going to split everything in the line, which is by these columns over here that you can see. So that's the tail of the hash and the number of times it's been hacked. So we're going to split it by the column. And then we're going to loop and say for line, so that's where the line comes from, for line in hashes dot text. Now, if I leave it like this actually won't work. And I'll show you why in a second. Actually, let's just do that now. So let's see what print hashes will give us. Instead of read response, we'll run this one now. So get password leaks count. And if I run, let's clear this. I get an error. Well, I get an error because we have to add the hash to check as well. So what should the hash to check be? Well, it's the tail, right? The tail of our actual password. So I'm going to add the tail to the second parameter, save and run again. All right, I get a response 200 and I get a generator object. This generator object we can actually loop through, right? So let's see what happens. If I do for, remember we have the hash and the count. So let's do hash, H for hash, and count in hashes. Because remember, we've converted to a tuple that has the hash and then the count. Because we're splitting, remember. So if we do this, let's just print H and count. If I run this, I get an error, value error. Not enough values to unpack. Expected to got 1. Why is that? Let's just print H and see what happens. And remove count for now. Let's clear this and run this again. It looks like we didn't split properly. Every item is its own list. So we actually have to use something called split lines here on our string. And as you can see, it returns a list of the lines in the string. And it breaks at the line boundaries. So when we actually do a for loop over the hash text, if we scroll up, let's see if we can see it. Nope, it's not there anymore. But if we scroll up, we just got a massive list of text. Ideally, on each line, we split this so that this line is, well, instead of each individual element, the actual hash and count. So we just need to do dot split lines, like this. If I save this and run once again, that's a lot better. So now we have what we want. We can once again go back to what we had before, which is count. And if we print H and count, let's save, run this again, and that's a lot better. We have each item separated. Let's take a break and continue this in the next video. We're getting so close, I can almost see the finish line, so hang in there. We now have the hash and the count. So we can finalize this function of get password leaks count. In here, as we're looping through each item, what do we want to check? Well, we want to check that if the hash, that is the tail of the hash here, is equal to hash to check. Remember, hash to check is the tail end of our hashed password that we never send to anybody. That is on our own machine, so it's nice and secure. And we're going to check this because the API returned us a list of these tailed hashes. So if that matches, well, in that case, I want you to return the count. So I want to return how many times this password has been leaked. Otherwise, just return 0. Again, I can do this because it's going to exit out of this loop whenever it sees the return keyword. Now, in my pwned API check, I'm going to run this function, which in tail is going to grab all this information and return the count of the times that the hashed password has been leaked. So we have one last thing to do. That is the ability to actually print out the result of all these calculations. So let's remove this for now and create a main function. And this main function is going to receive the arguments that we give it right in here in our command line. So we're going to import, as you might have seen before, the sys module. And in here, we're going to have a main function that receives the arguments, which is the passwords that we want to check. And for now, we'll just pass here. But at the bottom, we're going to call the main function with the sys.argv and accept any number of arguments after we do the Python 3 check my pass.py, and then we give it all the arguments that we want, which are the passwords. So we're going to run the function like this. This main function, all it's going to do is we're going to say for password in the arguments, because we can give it multiple passwords. We're going to loop through that, and we're going to have a SHA-1 password and a count, or we'll just do the count because we're going to receive the count from the get password leaks count. So we can do that by just doing pwned API check, and we'll pass it the password that we're checking. And all we're going to do is actually inside of this block say if count exists. In that case, I want you to print an F string, and this F string is going to say the password that we're looping through was found, the count of how many times, and then we'll say you should probably change your password. Otherwise, if that means there's no count, that is, there were no matches, then you're all good. We can say fstring password was not found. Carry on. So that's a good password. You should carry on, you're all good. And then finally, just for fun, let's return out of this function, return done. Just like that. If I save this, let's see what this gives us. I'm going to say Python 3, check my pass, and let's just check hello. I get hello was not found, carry on. But we know that hello was found before, right? I mean, that's a simple password. We should actually get something good here. Now, I also want to remove this response of print since we don't need it anymore. Can you spot the error? Again, this is a bit of a tricky part with Python, right? It's the indentation and something that we've seen before. So you want to get good at debugging your own code and figuring out what happens. In this case, we can go step by step through the code, but we can think, we actually never tested this count function. And if we look over here, our indentation is a little bit off, right? We have the if check, but then we always return 0. This return should be like this. After the for loop. After we've checked everything, nothing has been matched, then we should return 0. So if I save and run this again, all right, now it's working. You notice that one simple slight error can give you completely different results. So it's always good to go step by step and try out something with something that you already know works. And it's also important to use your debugging skills that you'll develop throughout the course to try and figure things out. Now, no programmer is going to write a perfect program right out of the bat. Most of the time, you're trying to figure out why you're getting this error, why this is happening. And this is just something that you become better and better at as you code. So the only cure to this is to just keep coding. Hopefully, throughout the course, you've seen some of the errors that I make and how I debug them. so that you start to adopt these patterns as well. Anyway, this is awesome. This is finally working. Let's try a couple more things. Let's say bye and then some gibberish. All right, looks like this is working as well. This is awesome. Our password checker is working. Now I want to do one more thing here to finish out this project, so let's do that in the next video. We've just built our password checker. It's pretty cool, right? I guarantee you this is something that if you start talking about it during an interview, the interviewer is going to be pretty impressed because it does have some pretty advanced topics. But hopefully this whole process made sense and you now have a tool that works and that you can even check your passwords to make sure that you're being secure online. Now, a bit of a caution here that I want to note is that right now we're entering the passwords in the command line. I'm using something called a fish shell. You may have different shells or programs running here that sometimes actually save these commands. If you remember, if I press an up arrow here, you see that I get my passwords back. So somewhere on my computer, this is being saved. Maybe that's not super secure because somebody might have or acquire access to it. So a good way to perhaps for you to improve this program is to read these passwords from a text file instead of a command line argument. But I'll leave that up to you because by now you should know how to do that. The final thing I want to do is just add over here at the bottom, since this should be our main module, to just say if __ name equals main. So only run this file if it's the main file being run from the command line and not if it's being imported. So in here, if I run this, this still works, but we make sure that this file is only going to be run if it's the main file being run. Now, another neat thing that you can do as well is you can also do sys.exit to exit the process in case for some reason this doesn't exit, just to make sure that the system call actually exit and brings us back to the command line. So again, if I save this, there you go. Everything is still working. The only difference that you'll see here is that we have the done being returned versus over here where it wasn't, because we're exiting out of this file. So this entire check my pass Python file was run. And at the end of it all, what does this entire function, this main function return? Well, it returns done. So we exit the entire process and we get the return value of done. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. We've completed our check my pass project. Now, I've told you this is my favorite project. That doesn't mean that the rest of the projects are going to suck throughout the course. I don't think they do. I'm just saying this is a pretty cool one. But I get excited about things like this. Anyway, share your work. Show this off to your parents, your friends, your family, your employer, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye. It's time for another project. And in this project, I'm going to show you how to create a Twitter bot. And this Twitter bot is going to do a bunch of interesting things that, well, might help us with Twitter. Maybe following back people, maybe retweeting something or liking a tweet based on a keyword. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, this section requires us to work with what we call the Twitter API. If you remember with our discussion of APIs, there are APIs that websites provide that gives us data. There's also ways for us to grab data from a website that doesn't have an API using something like scraping, and that's something that we talk about in the scraping section of the course. But then there's also permissive APIs. That is, well, Twitter gives us access to its data, but we have to get permission from Twitter to access that data. Not just anybody can get it. So if I go to Twitter API and I click on the link here, I actually already have set up an account. But if you don't have an account, your page is going to, well, look like this. And you're going to have to click on apply to apply for access. Now, the Twitter API is completely free. The reason you need to apply is because, well, they don't want people to do bad things, such as create a bot that just posts sensitive information, maybe does something illegal, does some spamming. So they just want to make sure that, hey, this is legitimately for a good use. What you can do when you apply is just say this is a personal developer use account. Make sure you read the agreement and policy. Essentially, don't be a jerk. And as long as you're nice and you're just experimenting like we are now, and we don't abuse the API, they'll give us access. Now, you can do that, or you can just watch me code a Twitter bot. Like I said, it doesn't take long, so you can do this on your own. And I do recommend you signing up for the API because it is kind of fun and cool to build a Twitter bot. Now, once you've created an account, you'll have something like this. And they've actually recently changed their UI, so it looks a lot more confusing than it needs to be. But all you need to do is to just click on Get Started. They have really, really good documentation here that you can actually go to Docs, Documentation, and read up on how you can use the API. But in my case, I want to just create an app. Now in here, I've already created a ZTM bot, but you can just click on Create an App here. You can add an app name, some description of what the application does, so you can say for developer use. You'll have to provide some sort of a website URL, and you just have to fill out some of this information. Now, I wasn't going to just record me entering this information because that wouldn't be exciting to you, so I've created one ahead of time. Now, what we're going to do with this bot is write our own Python script and interact with this API. In order for us to do that, we're going to use something called Tweepy, which, as you can see, is an easy-to-use Python library for accessing the Twitter API. So using the Tweepy library, we're going to be able to interact with this API and, well, write Python scripts. It's going to be a ton of fun. So in the next video, we're going to get started. I'm going to show you how to build your first Twitter bot. I have a folder here called the ZTM bot with my tweet.py file. So get ready and let's start coding in the next video. Welcome back. Let's build our Twitter bot. The first thing we want to do is import Tweepy library. And obviously this isn't a built-in module in Python, so we'll have to install it by saying pip3 install Tweepy. And this is going to install the Tweepy library. Awesome. Now, this library has really good documentation. So when we go to read the docs, it'll actually show you, hey, how to get started and give you some quick startup and setup that we need to do. In my case, I'm just going to copy the hello Tweepy code that they provided for us and just paste it in here. Now, there's a few things happening here. Obviously, we don't need the double imports. What we can see here is that we need to authenticate. That is, we use the Tweepy OAuth handler, and we have to give it something called a consumer key and a consumer secret. And then we also have to set access token with the access token and access token secret. Now, what this is what the Twitter API uses to verify our account. You remember how we had to create an account here and get authenticated because not just anybody can use the Twitter API? Well, this is what they're asking for. They're saying, hey, I want you to verify that this is you. If you're accessing the Twitter API, I want to know who's accessing that data. So in your case, after you've created an app, you just click on Details. And you see here that we have keys and tokens. These keys, I'm actually going to regenerate after this because you don't want to share these with anybody. But I'll at least show you how these work so that for yourself, you'll have different keys and API keys and secrets that you have that you'll have to copy and paste. Luckily, it tells us exactly what they are. We have the API key, which is the consumer key. We'll post it in here as a string. And then we have the API secret key, which is the consumer secret, which we'll paste it in there Let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see. And then we have the access token and the access token secret. Again, we copy the access token, paste it in here, and the secret. So again, these are the keys that Twitter API is going to be able to use to identify you, but you don't want to share these with anybody. Even though I'm showing it to everybody, like I said, after this video, I'm just going to regenerate so that, well, you won't be able to use my keys. After we've set up this auth object, we then use the tweepy.api to authenticate, and we now have access to the API. So let's check this out. I have my public tweets, and I can grab those by saying api.hometimeline, and then I'm going to loop over these tweets, the public tweets, and just print tweet.text. So let's try this out. Things never work the first time around, so we'll see. I'm going to run Python 3 and say tweet.py. All right, look at that. We've actually, no errors, gotten the tweets from the home timeline. And specifically from my Twitter home timeline. So we see it here, we have, let's see what we have. We have a retweet, an overview of the best newsletters that I know of for front-end developers, including general front-end, JavaScript, CSS. I hope this person included my newsletter. By the way, I have a newsletter, in case you're wondering, every month. But let's check this. If I go to my home, hey, look at that. An overview of the best newsletters that I know of for front-end developers. Brian Rinaldi, I hope my newsletter is included. But there you go. That's our timeline right there. And we're able to access the Twitter API. That was pretty easy, right? Not bad. Again, I keep saying this. I know I'm repetitive, but this is the power of Python. There are just so many libraries, such a large community, and it's so easy to create things. Already, just by looking at this Tweepy library, you probably can think of different things that you can do with Twitter. Like I said, the world is your oyster. That's why Python is such a popular language. Let's get back to this. So we have some tweets, but let's do something exciting here. What else does the Twitter API give us? Well, let's remove these public tweets for now and just print out, let's say, api.me. And this is actually going to give the information about myself. So let's actually give this a variable saying user. And I'm going to say api.me. And this is going to give information about the user. In my case, let's just do user.name. And again, this is something that you can check for yourself on their documentation. And if I run this, there you go. That's my name. That's my Twitter username. Okay, what else do we have? We have, well, the actual screen name, which will be my Twitter handle. Right here, Andre Nagoye with no spaces. And then let's just do, what else can we do? We can also do followers count. Again, these are all on the Tweepy API that you can check for yourself. If I do this, hey, look at that. It's actually pretty crazy that I have 10,000 followers. Not trying to show off or anything, but it's crazy. I barely tweet and somehow 10,000. So thank you for the follow. Not sure how useful my tweets are, but I appreciate the follows. That's pretty cool. But you know what? I want to start building something useful with my Twitter bot. So in the next video, we're going to do just that. I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye. Welcome back. It's time to do something, well, actually productive with our Twitter bot. So what can we do here? Well, I want to create a bot. This bot is going to be, well, you want to be really nice to your followers and you want to follow back people. If you actually look, I'm pretty horrible. I only have 6 people that I'm following. But if I had to go through all my followers and follow every single one of them, that's over 10,000 clicks. That's a pretty manual task. can we do that with our bot? Well, yeah, you can. So let's do a super generous bot. So this generous bot is always going to follow back. How can we build this? Well, we simply loop and say for follower in, and then here Tweepy gives us something called a cursor. Now, what is this cursor? If we go to the documentation here and I type in cursor, we'll get, well, an actual cursor tutorial. If we read here, we see that we use pagination in a lot of Twitter API. So whether we're going through timelines or user lists or messages, we have to click through different pages, right? Usually there's a lot of followers or a lot of timeline information. So the cursor allows us to, well, essentially in an easy way, go through everything on Twitter, whether it's through an entire timeline or through an entire followers list. And they even give you a nice tutorial of how to use it. You can see over here, for example, let's make this a little bit bigger. We see that we can use the tweepy.cursor to do API user timeline.items to grab all the items on the timeline. So with the Tweepy cursor, we can actually do API.followers to grab all the followers. And then we simply do .items so that we can loop through all the followers. Now, with this followers, well, let's just print them out. Now, I'm going to print followers, or follower in this case, because we're looping through here, and then just say .name. Now, the problem here is that when we do something like this, when let's say we're looping through a lot of things, we're going to be hitting the API over and over and over. And Twitter is not going to like that. I mean, this is a simple example, but when we constantly hit the Twitter API, that's hitting the Twitter servers, which Twitter has to pay for. And if everybody in the world hit the Twitter API over and over and over fast with, let's say, Python, that, as we know, on machines runs really fast, well, it's going to overload the servers and it's going to cost them a lot of money or crash the servers. So they actually implement something called a rate limit, where I'm only allowed to request the Twitter API, let's say every couple of milliseconds, so that it doesn't crash the server. And Tweepy actually allows us to work with this Twitter rate limit. So if I type in here, rate limiter, there's actually an error. You can see over here the rate limit error, which is raised when the API method fails due to hitting the Twitter's rate limit. Tweepy over here allows us to use the rate limit error to say, hey, if we hit this error, let's do something. So I'm going to create a little helper function. I'm going to say define limit handle. So we're going to handle here the limit. And we're going to pass it the cursor, which is, again, the cursor that's going to paginate or go through the entire data of API followers. And we're going to do a while loop that says, while this is true, just keep yielding cursor dot next. Because cursor is a generator. However, whenever we keep calling next here, which by the way, internally, this is what the cursor is doing, is just constantly calling next and just keeps going until we finish our followers. However, if this is not the case, well, in that case, I'm going to say except, and we're going to wrap this in a try block actually. So I'm going to say try here, so we can catch this error. So try while true. And then except if we get a tweepy.rate limit error, well, in that case, I want to pause and not hit the Twitter API so that we don't get in trouble and come back to it when we have finally gave it a bit of time. So we can actually do that with a built-in module in Python called time. And time allows us to do something really useful here. I can do something called sleep, which essentially says, hey, just pause this, whatever it's happening, just stay on this line for a few milliseconds. So if we do 1000, that's 1000 milliseconds or 1 second. So now we have a limit handle, or we can call it limit handler. And if we wrap the limit handler, which receives a cursor, so that is, we just wrap this entire thing, like so. Let's make this a little bit bigger. There we go. We now are able to not abuse and make sure that if we hit the rate limit, we take a bit of a pause instead of just getting errors. So let's see if that worked. I'm going to save and run our piece of code. Let's clear here and run this. All right. Do you see how it's pausing right now? So as soon as we hit the rate limit, it pauses and it just keeps going. And there you go. It's printing out all the followers that I have. That's pretty cool, right? Now, I'm actually going to stop this because, well, it's still going through it. But what we can do now is we can actually follow back each of these individual people. Now, in my case, I'm not on Twitter that much, so let's just follow somebody here at random. Let's follow this user right here. I'm going to copy this user's name like this, and I'm going to do something fun here. I'm going to say if follower.name is equal to this person, well then, in that case, I want to follow this person. So I'm going to say follow, which allows me to follow the user. If I save this and run my code, it's running. Like I say, it takes a bit of time because it has to go through the entire list. But I'm going to pause the video, and when this is done, we're going to see if this worked. All right, I'm back. That took a lot longer than I expected, so I changed my sleep time to 300. And for some reason, while I was running the script, that user decided to unfollow me. So we had to select a different user, which was a JS Smith. And I also added a break statement in here so that it didn't keep looping. Again, it was taking forever, so I just did a little shortcut here. Now, hopefully, I have followed back. Let's have a look. All right, looks like I have an extra. And yep, look at that. I have this person. I've just followed her back. So you can see how this might be useful. You might just follow everybody and remove this if statement. Maybe you're a little pretentious and you only want to follow back people based on their follow counts. So you might want to do something like if followers count is, let's say, higher than 100, then you follow back. So there's a lot of things that you can do here, but that's pretty cool. We created our first bot, the generous bot. In the next video, I want to do another little fun tool, what we call a narcissist bot. So let's see how that works in the next video. So we've created this generous bot that follows back, but what about a narcissist bot? Maybe a bot that loves your own tweets or loves a tweet based on some certain words. How can we build that? Well, let's remove this generous bot for now, or at least comment it out and leave it at the bottom. What we want to do is, let's say we want to search the keywords Python. For now, let's just search through number of tweets, and we'll set it at 2. We'll get to what these mean in a second. What we're going to do here is I'm going to say for tweet in the tweetbee.cursor. Again, this time around, instead of going through followers, I want to go through tweets. So in here, I can do something called API.search. If we go to the documentation here, and we go to the API reference, we see we have API.search that returns tweets that match a specified query. Again, if I go back, I can just say API.search to search the tweets, and we just search based on the term, which is right here, search. Let's rename this just so we know it's different, search string. Let's make this a little bit smaller. So this is going to be search string. So we're going to search the tweets with the search string of Python. So we're going to try and find all the tweets that contain the word Python. And I'm also going to do items in here so we can loop through them. But within the items, I can give it how many items we want to loop through. In this case, we just want to find the 2 tweets. So number of items, it's going to be 2. And in here, we're going to have another try block. And this try block is just going to say tweet.favorite to favorite the tweet. That includes Python. And we'll just print to make sure that it worked. I liked that tweet. Finally here, we can also add the limit handler to this cursor. But because we're only going through 2 items, I think we should be fine. Although it's always a good idea to wrap the limit handler with a tweetp cursor like we did before, but I just want to keep this clean so you can see what's going on. Now in here, we've printed this. We'll do an except block here that will say tweetp error. So this is if the tweetp errors, we'll just say as e. And in here, we'll just print the reason for the error. And then finally, if we get any stop iteration errors, in that case, we can just break out of the loop. So let's save this and see if this works. I'm going to open up my console and run our file. All right, we get an error. We have tweetp has no attribute tweetp error. And that's because it should be tweep error. Again, let's run this. And oh boy, we have another error here. This time around, there's no tweet.favorite. But if I go to the API and I do, let's say, favorite, I don't get any results. And this is because I'm Canadian. And fun fact, if you're Canadian, this is how you spell favorite. But in the States, you spell favorite like this, with an O. There you go. We have a favorite method here. So again, fun fact, I am Canadian, but also Romanian, and that was my spelling error because, well, tweetp was obviously written by person speaking American English. All right, so let's give it a go. And it looks like we have twice. I like that tweet. Let's go back to check if this worked. If I go back to, let's say, profile and look at likes. Hey, look at that. I've liked a tweet that happened 1 hour ago that had the word Python. And another tweet that I have no idea what's saying, but looks like there's Python in here. Yeah, look, there's Python right over there. Hopefully none of these say anything bad, but look at that. You can see here that I've liked these tweets. I'm going to remove that just because I don't know if I should be liking these. There you go. How cool is that? So now our narcissistic tweet can potentially just tweet anything that says our own name or like our own name. If there's ever a tweet that has my own name, well, let's do that. Let's like the 5 tweets that have my own name, and my narcissistic bot will hopefully work. And look at that. This is kind of embarrassing, but it looks like I've already liked 2 of those tweets. You have already favorited this status. But let's go back. If I refresh here now, all right, look at that. I've favorited all the tweets that include my names. And looks like these ones I've already liked before. Very, very cool. There's my narcissistic bot. And you can do different things here. For example, I can retweet as well if I wanted to instead of favorite. So now you know how on Twitter you always have those bots that somehow always retweet something? Well, this is what they do. They look for a keyword like JavaScript or Python or whatever, and they automatically retweet it. Very, very cool. As you can see, this Tweepy library is very useful, and combined with the Twitter API, you can do some really interesting things. But again, you want to be responsible here because there's a lot of ways that you can abuse and just spam people with Twitter. But hopefully, now you see some use cases. For example, if you want to follow back all your followers, instead of clicking through every single profile, you now have a programmer's way of solving that problem with good old Python. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hey, we have another project that we need to work on. Now, this project is a little unique because it's going to be a simple project, but I'm going to attempt to do this with no rehearsal. I haven't really tried this before. I want to show you exactly what my process is when I'm exploring an idea. Let's say I want to send myself a text message. That's right. Using Python, I want to receive a text message on my phone. And there's some interesting use cases, right? You can perhaps create a Python script that checks the stock price of, let's say, Apple, and maybe sends you a text that this is now a good time to buy Apple when the ticker symbol gets to a certain price. Or maybe when we create our portfolio in the web development section of this course, and we'll have a contact form for our clients to contact us, maybe when that happens, we want to send ourselves a text message as well. So this is a very, very useful thing to know. But how can we do that? Well, luckily, it's all about APIs. And Twilio is the go-to when it comes to anything related to communications. Whether it's text, voice, or audio, Twilio is a great API for you to use. Now, if I click on Twilio here, again, we see that some big companies are using it, but we're also going to have to sign up to the service. Now, I'm going to save you the trouble of me going through the sign up process. Instead, I'm going to fast forward and I'll show you once I'm logged in. All right, once you're logged in, you're going to get to the dashboard over here and you're going to want to create a project. So you see over here that there's a couple of templates that you can actually just create for yourself. You can do phone verification, SMS chatbots, two-factor authentication. There's even a game, Learn and Explore, which allows you to explore the API. In my case, I don't want to use a template. I want to just create a product, and I want to do a programmable SMS, that is texting. So let's continue. And by the way, websites like these always change their UI and the visual. So it might look different for you depending on when you watch the video, but all the functionality should be the same. I'm going to give my project the name Zero to Mastery Texter. And let's click continue. Nope, I don't have any friends. This is just me, so I won't invite a teammate. And there we go. We have our dashboard. In the next video, I'm going to try and attempt to send myself a text message. Now, I haven't really practiced this, so we'll see how it goes. We'll do a bit of trial and error. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. So again, I haven't really done this much before, but let's see if I can send myself a text message. I'm going to say get started with programmable SMS. All right, and I'm building my application. Looks like I can just click on just exploring. Let's see how I can do this really, really fast. Oh, first I have to get a Twilio phone number. So in order to send a message, I need a phone number. And this is my Twilio phone number. All right, so we'll choose this number. That's great. All right, I'm going to copy this number in case I need it. Let's click done. And by the way, a job of a programmer is to, well, most of the time read documentation, Google around, and just figure out how things work in general. You're just a problem solver. All right, so we have send a message here. We have my phone number that I just received. And let's see over here in the right, request, it looks like, oh yeah, look at that. I can click on Python and it shows me exactly, how cool is this? Exactly what code I need to send my message. All right, and it gives me even the auth token and the SID. And it looks like the auth token I'll have to grab. All right, in the next video, we're going to copy this code and try to send myself a text message. Let's see if it works. Welcome back. So I've just found exactly the code that I need to send myself a text message. Let's give that a go. I'm going to copy and paste into my sms.py file that I just created in my TextMe folder. And all right, that looks like it's the code that I need. Now, before I do this, it looks like this gives me a nice dashboard to test out my code before I actually run it myself. So I'm going to here, in this to field, actually put my phone number down. Now I'm going to blur this out. I don't want people texting me because I'm already bad at answering texts as it is. And the body over here will say, hey, or you know what, let's go, hello. There we go. And we see over here that it actually updates right over here. So let's make the request and see what happens. So I get a 400 bad request. The to number is not a valid phone number, and that's because I forgot the prefix. Let's do a make request again. All right, and I get an error. The number is unverified. Trial accounts cannot send messages to unverified numbers. So I have to verify my number that they gave me. That's kind of annoying, but all right, let's do that. All right, so after a bit of searching, I saw over here that we can go to phone numbers, and in the verified caller IDs, I have to verify my number. So I actually have to enter my real phone number so that they can verify it. I guess this is so that people can't just spam random phone numbers, which makes sense. So let's see, where's Canada here? And I'm gonna hide my number again. And I guess, or we can, I don't want you to call me, so let's do text instead. Oh, I have to enter it again. All right, text me. Yep, I got a verification code. Submit, that's kind of cool. I got a text on my phone. All right, so I have my verified number. Let's go back to, where were we? We were doing our project. Get started. All right, and we have to do hello, and we'll use Python again. Okay, let's make the request and see what happens. Hey, 201 created. The request was successful. And holy moly, I'm gonna post this on the screen, but I just got a text from Twilio. It says hello. Now, mind you, it says that it's sent from a Twilio trial account. So obviously, when I have a fully paid non-trial account, it wouldn't say this, but this is awesome. I just received a text. All right, so I didn't even have to open anything really. I can just copy and paste this into my project file. I just need to copy the auth token, which in here they automatically include, but I assume that I can get the auth token somehow from here. Let's see how we can grab it. Let's do settings. I'll search auth token. Let's do authorized app search. Nope, not there. Where could it be? Let's go to user settings. Nope, that's not it. Oh, that's silly. Look at that. In the dashboard auth token, I can just click view. definitely gonna hide that after this. So now auth token, I can just paste it in here. And I can change the body to whatever I want. So I'll say, I can't believe this works. Now the other thing is we have to download the Twilio library. So let's just say pip3 install Twilio. All right, and this is now installed. And let's run this file. I'm going to say python3 sms.py. All right. Looks like it may have worked. Let's see. Oh boy, I'm taking a screenshot of this. That definitely worked. I just received a text message. How cool is that? Now, the reason I showed you this text tutorial is not because you really learn anything from it. I just wanted to show you my thought process when I work through things that maybe I haven't encountered before. It's a lot of trial and error, knowing where to look. For example, I knew that Twilio was a popular tool for text messaging, but even Googling, you're most likely going to come across Twilio. And then it's all about reading about their API and what you can do. And most of them, like Twilio, if they're big enough, have really good documentation where you basically don't even have to code. Now, the beauty here is that in a couple of minutes, I was able to send myself a text message. And now there's so many use cases that you can think of. Again, we want to start thinking like programmers. How can we use this? Maybe when we receive an email from an important person. Maybe when we get a specific tweet that we're interested in. Maybe we can receive a text using the Twilio API. Maybe you have a portfolio website and you want to get a text anytime somebody completes your contact form, or maybe orders your product from your startup landing page. The possibilities are endless. But with that, you've just learned how to send yourself a text message. That was a lot of fun, but I think we deserve a break now. So I'll see you in the next video.